The garage smelled like wax and gasoline when I lifted the door and stopped breathing. My midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan looked like it had gone 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. Windshield spiderwebbed from end to end, hood cratered with deep, deliberate dents, both side mirrors hanging from their wires like broken bones, the front bumper torn clean off. The golden bull emblem ripped from the grille and sitting on the concrete floor like a trophy someone had discarded. For a full moment, the only sounds were the soft tick of cooling metal and my own breath going shallow. 20 years of military service, 4 deployments, things I don't talk about at dinner, and my hands were trembling standing in my own garage. Then I saw it. On the floor by the rear wheel, a tiny fleck of pink nail polish stuck to a shard of glass. That specific, obnoxious rose shade, the one she always wore. My stomach went cold in the particular way it goes cold when confusion finishes converting into certainty. I already knew. I just needed the footage to confirm it. I pulled out my phone, opened the security feed, and there she was. Karen Whitmore, HOA secretary, self-appointed guardian of neighborhood integrity, at 2:07 in the morning, walking up my driveway in her pink cardigan, carrying a sledgehammer, like she'd been crowned queen of the cul-de-sac. I watched her do it, every swing. And when she walked out, she didn't rush. She took one long, slow look back at the car, my car, and smiled. I exhaled through my teeth. Got you. To understand how we got there, you have to understand what Maple Ridge Estates used to be and what Karen Whitmore did to it. I bought my house after 20 years of service. Sand, sweat, noise, things that don't have polite names. And when I finally got out, all I wanted was a quiet cul-de-sac lined with oak trees, sprinklers hissing at sunrise, kids on scooters until dinner. The kind of predictable, unremarkable peace that people who've never been without it take completely for granted. For 15 years, I had it. Then somebody decided the neighborhood needed an HOA. At first, the board seemed reasonable enough. They repainted the mailboxes, trimmed the entrance shrubs, threw a barbecue. Tom Harris, the president, retired high school teacher, calm, practical, helped me navigate a fence permit without making it a federal case. Sarah Lopez, the realtor on the board, kept things organized. Bob Carter, a Vietnam vet who preferred fishing to governance, handled maintenance with minimal drama. And then there was Karen. Mid-50s, blonde curls stiff as a helmet. Sunglasses big enough to hide behind. Always dressed like she was walking into a board meeting, even to retrieve her own mail. The kind of person who measured her significance in laminated rule books and the particular smile that means, I know something you don't. The first time we spoke, I was walking my German Shepherd Duke down the street. She stopped me in the middle of the road and asked whether I had an approved leash length. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She handed me a printout about standard leash dimensions and informed me that some homeowners preferred shorter leads for aesthetic harmony. I stood there, genuinely waiting for a camera crew to appear. Nobody came. I laughed it off. In the military, you meet control freaks in every rank, but they usually wear their authority on their collar, not their pearls. Still, I noticed something brittle in Karen's tone. The specific quality of glass that's already been stressed. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was looking for enemies. The board tolerated her because her paperwork intimidated them more than confrontation did. Violations for trash cans left out 5 minutes past pickup. Grass measured with an actual ruler. A patriotic banner declared unauthorized signage. I heard her whisper at a meeting once that people in this community needed guidance. Tom smiled politely. I saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. Then the Lamborghini arrived. I'd saved for it for years. Deployment bonuses, disability compensation, a fortunate stock investment, and the specific discipline of a person who spent 2 decades not having anything to spend money on. Midnight blue Huracan Evo, naturally aspirated V10. To me, it wasn't a statement. It was a reward for surviving things most people couldn't imagine. When I parked it in the driveway that first weekend, sunlight catching the paint, I genuinely felt like I'd finally closed the chapter between war and peace. The neighbors loved it. Kids stopped their bikes to stare. Tom gave me a thumbs up from across the street. Everyone except Karen, who appeared that afternoon with her clipboard like a customs officer searching for contraband. "Beautiful car," she said flatly, "though I'm not sure a commercial-grade vehicle aligns with HOA guidelines." Commercial grade. I told her it was a car, not a bulldozer. She informed me that some residents felt such displays affected property values. I smiled the way you smile when your equipment fails at the worst possible moment. Tight, controlled, impatient, and told her that was fortunate since I wasn't selling property. Her jaw twitched. She scribbled something and walked away without another word. That was our first skirmish. Over the following weeks, her patrols became routine. She'd walk slowly past my house pretending to check mailboxes while her phone lens pointed at my garage. I caught her crouching near my lawn one morning, photographing a patch of clover. The next day, notice of weed infestation. Corrective action required within 48 hours. The VA landscaping crew mowed that yard twice a week. Tom told me when I called that clover wasn't even classified as a weed in our county and that Karen was issuing violations without board approval. They'd warned her twice. If she kept it up, they'd vote her out. I appreciated his calm, but I knew how bullies operated. Warnings don't stop them. Consequences do. One Saturday, I was detailing the car in my open garage. Music low, Duke nearby, just a man cleaning his own property. Karen's shadow crossed the sunlight. "You can't operate a commercial garage here," she said, arms crossed. I told her I was cleaning my car. She said I had equipment, chemicals, and noise, and was obviously running a detailing business. I told her the only client present was me. She raised her phone and started filming. I straightened slowly, told her she was trespassing, and asked her to leave. She declared it public enforcement and said she had authority as HOA secretary to ensure compliance. I told her to comply with my request and leave my property. Her lips tightened. "You'll regret this." She left. By Monday, I had 3 violation letters, none of which referenced policies that actually existed. Tom confirmed this with the exhausted tone of a man being slowly worn down from the inside. By early July, I had started counting how many times a day her shadow crossed my driveway. 3 times before lunch, twice in the evening. She would stop at my mailbox pretending to tie her shoe, while her phone camera pointed at the garage. She began spreading things on the neighborhood social media platforms. That I was running an unlicensed car repair business. That strangers were visiting my house late at night. The strangers were VA physical therapists helping me rehab my knee. Tom came by one afternoon. He looked 10 years older than he had 2 months ago. "She's emailing the HOA's insurance provider claiming you're a liability risk. She says your military background makes you dangerous." PTSD. She was diagnosing me now, to anyone who would listen, weaponizing the language of mental health as a smear. She was also contacting local realtors to flag my address as a potential dispute property, trying to damage my home's value. That wasn't harassment anymore. That was defamation. I opened my old deployment chest that night. Inside my field log, on the inside cover, I'd copied down a line from my commanding officer. "Don't fight anger with anger, fight it with preparation." So I prepared. New security cameras, high definition, motion activated, cloud synced. Infrared for night coverage. Silent motion alarms that ping my phone directly. I set them up with the methodical calm of a man who has spent his career understanding that the worst threats aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones who smile first. Karen had been smiling a lot lately. At a routine HOA meeting, she proposed a new amendment requiring garages to remain closed except during entry and exit, and banning vehicles over 75 decibels from operating in the neighborhood. Tom pointed out this would ban half the cars in the city. She said maybe so, but it would protect property values from excess. The word hung in the air. Everyone knew who she meant. I stood and said what I'd been holding for weeks. that she'd been fabricating violations, trespassing on property, and harassing families, that she'd called the police on 8-year-olds riding bikes, that she didn't care about community, she cared about control. She told me my aggression was exactly why people felt unsafe. I told her people felt unsafe because she was a bully. Bob, the maintenance vet, muttered, "He's not wrong." She slammed her folder and stormed out. Tom told me afterward that I just made her my full-time enemy. I told him she already was. After that night, things got darker.
Small scratches appeared on my car door. Motion lights triggered at 2 and 3 in the morning. Every time I checked the footage, whatever had triggered the sensor stayed just outside frame. One morning I found a note under my windshield wiper. 4 words: "Enjoy it while it lasts." It wasn't a warning, it was a promise. I set my trap carefully. Saturday morning, I loaded an overnight bag into my Honda Accord, gave Duke extra food for the neighbor watching him, and drove to my sister's place 2 hours north. As I backed out, I caught Karen's curtains twitch. A flash of blonde, that phone camera. I waved just to be petty. She didn't wave back. I didn't think about her for 36 hours. Sunday evening, I came home to a quiet street, sorted mail, let Duke in from the back. Routine and normal. Then something, not a sound, not a signal, just the particular internal alert that 20 years of deployment builds in a person, told me to check the garage. The world tilted when I opened that door. I won't describe it again, but I stood there for a full minute before my military training reasserted itself over the shock. Step 1. Document everything. I photographed every angle, cataloged every piece of damage. Then I opened the security app, scrubbed through the footage until 2:07 a.m., and there she was, in her pink cardigan, with a sledgehammer, moving through my garage for 20 minutes of controlled, deliberate destruction. When she walked out, she took a long look back and smiled like she'd won something. I called 911 with steady hands. The dispatcher confirmed units were on the way. I called USAA, my insurance provider, the one that actually understands veteran situations. They assured me an adjuster would be there first thing Monday morning. When Officer Willow arrived and circled the car, he said the quiet, professional nothing of a man who processes scenes like this and arrived at conclusions without editorializing. "Someone wanted to hurt you, not rob you," he said. Nothing else was touched. He watched the footage. When the 5th hammer blow landed on screen, his expression hardened. That's about as clear-cut as it gets. Then he said something I hadn't expected. "Mind if we have a little fun first?" He held up his recorder. Sometimes people dig their own graves faster when they don't know who's listening. He dialed Karen on speaker. She picked up after 2 rings, defensive, clipped. I told her someone had destroyed my car while I was away. Did she know anything about it? A pause, static, then, "Why would I know anything about your stupid car?" She didn't stop there. I asked whether she'd noticed anything near my garage. "Good. I'm glad someone finally did something about that ridiculous show-off machine. You think you're special, don't you? Flashing your money around while the rest of us work honest jobs. You're just a broken-down soldier living off pity checks." Willow mouthed, "Keep her talking." I took a slow breath. "Karen, are you saying you destroyed my car?" She said yes. "Damn right I did. Every night I had to look at that thing and remember you. Some washed-up vet acting like he's better than everyone else." Willow cut in smoothly. "Ma'am, this is Officer Willow with the city police. You just confessed to felony vandalism. We'll be at your residence shortly." A sharp gasp, a clatter. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, the cul-de-sac glowed red and blue again. Karen was on her porch, pale, phone in one hand, the sledgehammer leaning against the railing like a bad prop in a play she hadn't quite worked out. When they cuffed her, she screamed about injustice and veterans being violent freeloaders and how it wasn't fair that I had a luxury car while she worked a real job. Neighbors looked out from behind curtains. Tom stood in his doorway, face grave. Sarah whispered something that sounded like, "Oh my God." Karen caught my eyes as they walked her to the patrol car. "You ruined my life." I didn't answer. I didn't need to.
I tried to sleep that night, didn't succeed. Karen had made bail by Wednesday. Her lawyer argued mental distress and intoxication as mitigating factors, and somehow it worked. She was back in her house 72 hours after swinging a sledgehammer at my front door. Tom called to warn me. I thanked him and reinforced every lock in the house. Moved Duke's bed near the front entrance. Adjusted every camera angle. At 11:43 that night, Duke started barking. That low, urgent, protective sound that means something real, not squirrels. My phone buzzed with the garage motion alert. The live feed loaded. Karen was back, in my driveway, carrying the same sledgehammer. But this time she wasn't looking at the car. She was looking at my house. I called 911 immediately. Dispatcher, units en route, stay inside, do not engage. Karen lifted the hammer and shouted into the night, "You ruined my life. I'll finish what I started." The first blow hit my front door with a crack that shook the frame. I opened the door halfway. 20 years of training took over completely. I sidestepped her momentum, caught her wrist, redirected her own force. The hammer left her hand and hit the concrete. She screamed and clawed. The alcohol on her breath mixed with something rawer, more desperate. I used one controlled, precise strike. Enough to stop, not to maim. She went down. I stepped back, breathing steadily, Duke growling at my side. Looked down at the woman who had spent months trying to dismantle my peace, now unconscious on my front step with the sledgehammer between us. When Officer Willow jumped out of the first patrol car and saw the scene, he just said quietly, "You've got to be kidding me." The paramedics confirmed she was fine, bruised ego, intact everything else. When she came around, she started screaming about conspiracies and fake footage. Willow told her she'd broken into a home with a deadly weapon while on bail for a felony and that she was done. They cuffed her again. As they loaded her into the patrol car, she made eye contact with me one final time. I said calmly, "Enjoy prison, Karen. At least there'll be someone else to tell you what to do." That night, sitting on my porch with Duke at my feet, as the last siren faded, I finally let myself breathe. Her porch light was off. The house sat dark across the street, and for the first time in months, the air didn't feel hostile. The judge denied bail the second time. Karen's lawyer didn't even contest it. Between the original confession, the clear footage from both incidents, and the assault charge while on bail, she was facing 3 to 5 years minimum. The HOA held an emergency meeting that same week and voted unanimously to remove her from the board permanently.
Tom brought me the official notice in person and told me an apology letter was coming, signed by every board member. I told him to make it handwritten. I wanted to frame it next to the repair receipt. He laughed. Genuinely, for the first time in months. The trial came 6 weeks later. I testified on the 4th day, sticking strictly to facts, the timeline, the footage, the documentation. When the defense tried to argue temporary mental breakdown, Willow leaned over and whispered to me, "If destroying someone's car counts as a breakdown, half the country would qualify." The judge denied leniency, 5 years state prison, mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Karen broke down sobbing when the sentence was read. The sound didn't move me. It just echoed like static in a frequency I'd already tuned out. Outside the courthouse, Tom and Sarah were waiting. Sarah said the board was revising the HOA charter, so no single person could ever hold unchecked authority again. Tom said they owed me another apology for not acting sooner. I told him, "You can't protect people from envy. You can only make sure envy doesn't get a seat at the table." What came after was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Boredom. The good kind. The kind that means nothing is on fire. The new HOA leadership was a young couple, reasonable, calm, too busy raising twins to care about lawn color ratios or leash length regulations. Neighbors started actually greeting each other again. The Burke kids went back to riding their bikes in the cul-de-sac without anyone calling the police. The mail carrier started smiling at drop-offs instead of delivering violation notices. I spent my mornings fixing things around the house. Fences, garden lights, the deck out back. Physical work that produced something, which is the only kind of therapy that has ever made sense to me. The Lamborghini came back from the shop looking better than it had the day I bought it. USAA had pulled in parts from Europe, and when I ran my hand over the repainted hood, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just satisfaction, but closure. Something that had been taken from me was fully restored. The car was never really the point. Karen understood that, which is why she chose it. She wanted to damage something that represented what I'd earned. She failed. Completely. Officer Willow stopped by one afternoon while I was washing the car. He mentioned something the DA had uncovered during sentencing. Apparently, Karen had once worked at a luxury dealership years ago and been fired for stealing a client's keys and taking the car out joyriding. Habits, apparently. He said it with the wry smile of a man who has been doing this long enough to stop being surprised by human nature, but never quite stops finding it interesting. Before he left, he looked around the cul-de-sac and said it had been one of the wildest cases in his career. I told him, "Welcome to suburban warfare." He tipped his hat and drove off. Karen's house eventually sold. A young family painted the shutters navy and filled the porch with hanging plants. They never asked about the history, and nobody volunteered it. The cul-de-sac went back to being exactly what I moved here for. Predictable, quiet, the sound of sprinklers in the morning and kids after school. Here's what I've thought about since, sitting on the porch in the evenings with Duke asleep at my feet. Karen Whitmore didn't destroy my car because she cared about HOA regulations. She destroyed it because someone else had something she had decided she deserved. And every day she had to look at it was a reminder of the gap between what she wanted and what she'd built. Envy dressed up as righteousness. Control costumed as standards. The clipboard and the laminated rulebook as substitutes for whatever it was she had been unable to build in her own life. I've seen versions of this before, in uniform, in deployment zones, in people who respond to chaos by grasping for control over everything within reach, including things that were never theirs. The specific irony of Karen's situation is that she already had a quiet cul-de-sac lined with oak trees. She had the peace. She just couldn't inhabit it because someone else's version of peace looked bigger than hers, and she couldn't tolerate that. There's something important in how I handled it. Not the combat training, not the self-defense. Those were responses to physical threat. The more important discipline was the months before that, when I was documenting instead of retaliating, building a record instead of losing my temper, letting the process do its work instead of satisfying my anger in ways that would have cost me everything. In the military, we call it restraint, and it's harder than aggression. Aggression is easy. It feels good in the moment, but it hands your enemy exactly what they need to reframe the story, to make you the problem, to let them walk away claiming victimhood while you're the one who lost control. Karen wanted me to lose control. Every patrol, every camera pointed at my face, every petty violation notice. She was trying to get a reaction she could use. I didn't give her one until she made the mistake of thinking I wasn't paying attention. And by then I had everything. Know your rights. Document everything. Upgrade your cameras. Read your actual bylaws, not the ones someone invents for a meeting. And when someone tells you that what you earn somehow threatens their peace, understand that the problem is theirs, not yours, and be very, very patient about letting the consequences find them on their own. Peace isn't yours to give away, and it isn't theirs to take. If you've ever had someone mistake your patience for permission, or your quiet for weakness, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments, subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one.